Hi, I'm Deborah, and welcome to #DebTalk. It's an informal mentoring space that provides guidance, advice, ideas to help you navigate the workplace. Today, the topic of our talk is 5 types of managers and tips to work with them. 5 types of managers and tips to work with them. I want to start off with a couple of statistics that I think you will find very interesting. 4,478,000 workers quit their job in August of 2019. It was the highest quit rate recorded by the Bureau of Labor Statistics according to CNBC.com. 4,478,000. Pay attention to this statistic as well. 57% of workers left their jobs due to their boss, per a PR Newswire article in 2019, 57%. And in that same article, it said that 32% of workers were seriously considering leaving their job as a result of their manager. In my opinion, a manager is one of the most important ingredients when it comes on to having a good experience in the workplace. One of the things I like to say, and that I said to others that I've coached or that I've spoken with, is managers have the power to create an environment or to set the climate in a department or in their team. When you think about it, if you have say you work in an unhealthy organization where the culture is awful or toxic, but you have an amazing manager. Many people actually stay at companies like that longer than they normally would because of the fact that they like their manager so much. It's like their manager is an oasis in the desert, so to speak. But look at the flip side. It could be a great organization, but the manager is not great. And you actually see people running to the hills, because that manager, after a while, really becomes the face of the organization to that worker. A manager makes the world of difference. I've been really fortunate in my life to have great managers. I've had some managers who challenged me, but when I rose to the occasion, I actually grew. And then there were other managers that they kept me in prayer. It was very difficult to deal with them. The fact of the matter, though, is that most of us don't get to pick who we work for. We really don't get to pick our managers. We get to pick our attitudes towards those managers. We simply have to, most of the times, do the very best that we can to work well with that person. So we typically don't get to pick who we work for. Most people don't. We don't have that option. But we get to pick our attitude, like I said, and just ensure that we work with that person to the very best of our ability. Today, I want to talk you through basically how to deal with 5 different types of managers. They're managers that I've encountered during my career, and I want to share some tips that I think will be helpful to help you as you navigate. One of the first types of managers I encountered after I left college is the unaccountable manager. This particular person simply did not take ownership or accountability for the guidance or the advice that she would give to me. I worked in a matrix organization, so I had 2 managers. This particular manager had a legal background, and a portion of my job had a legal component to it. So I needed to speak to this person and get advice from them because they were the subject matter expert. What would happen, though, is that she would share the approach that we should take, or she would share pieces of content. And when things would go sideways, what she would say is, "Oh, no, I didn't say that. She simply didn't understand, or she misunderstood me." This happened a couple of times, and this is something that bothers me because my reputation is really important to me. I want to work hard. I want to get it right. And so I sought advice from a mentor or two, and the feedback that they gave was try summarizing the advice or the guidance or the approach that she's giving you in writing and send it to her. This I thought was a great idea because it, number one, allowed me to figure out, was I understanding her properly? I put that in writing and sent it to her, and it allowed her to read through the content and say, hey, is she getting this right? Or at least if there are errors in my understanding, to correct it from there. So the first piece of advice that I would give to you is to definitely put things in writing, summarize content that you share with this manager. If you find that this person is never accountable or doesn't stand by what they say, summarize the conversations that you have about a particular project to check with them. Is my understanding correct? Am I getting this right? Give them the opportunity to make corrections. And one of the purposes that this also serves is, if things go sideways, you have something to say, hey, I took this approach because of the guidance that I was provided with. In my case, what ended up happening is the person would actually read through my email summary and then call me on the phone and say, hey, I read your summary. Sure, go ahead. That sounds good. Which kind of frustrated me because that defeats the whole purpose. She never actually put anything in writing. So the only recourse that I had was to just summarize and say, hey, thank you so much for the feedback. Based on what we talked about, here's the direction that I'm going to go into, because I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. I want to make sure that I'm getting it right. And if you are my subject matter expert, then I have to make sure that you are aware of the steps that I'm taking and have the opportunity to advise me. So those are the tips that I would give you for working with the unaccountable manager. Let's move on to the next type of manager. In another role that I worked with, a lot of my coworkers saw this particular manager as a micromanager. What I noticed was that this person was very detail oriented and that they had very specific ways of how they wanted things done, how they wanted, what color it should be and what font should be used, whatever the deal is. They had very specific ideas of how they wanted things done, and they wanted it done in that way. What I also noticed was that I got anxious in this type of environment. However, I respected this person because they were excellent at what they did. They got excellent results and they modeled a work ethic that I did not see in the other departments. And so I respected that person and loved the fact that I got a chance to learn from this person. So what are some of the tips if you're working with somebody that you consider to be a micromanager? The first thing that I would say would be adapt, adjust. There's nothing wrong with you pulling this person aside, and if you have a different idea or a way of doing something that you think would make the process more effective, absolutely, I say have the courage to pull them aside and say, hey, could we try this, or could we try it this way? But if they say, no, I want it done this way, in this style, then you have to adapt, because the fact is you can't expect that this manager is going to adapt to you. You have to adapt to them. One of the things that Peter Drucker also says is a lot of managers, they get to where they get to, normally speaking, because of the fact that they are the way they are. They're not going to make the adjustment for you. That being said, I just want to put a caveat here. I'm never going to say adjust or adapt if you're being disrespected, if you were being abused in any way. Right is right, wrong is wrong. So that's something that you should never adapt to. In that case, you definitely need to make sure that you are addressing that manager in a respectful way or touching base with your HR department to get whatever assistance, but you never adapt to being abused or disrespected in any way. So the first tip is adapt. The second is, with this type of manager, make sure that you understand what they're asking for. Bring a notebook with you, sit them down and say, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the specifics of what you are asking for before I start this. So confirm that. And the third thing is, when you start a part of the project, for example, that you're working on, let them see a portion of it. Don't complete the whole thing and then let them see it. Complete a portion of it, ask them if you're on the right track, and then take it from there. We're moving on to the third type of manager, and that is the big picture / vague manager. This type of manager is really skimpy with the details. So they'll give you a general idea of what the end goal is, but you may not get a whole lot of details or instructions or resources that you can use to get you to where you want to get to. And that was something that was a challenge for me, because I love details. I love getting specifics, and I love getting what I consider to be comprehensive, just good instructions. I like that. But in a way, being with this type of manager caused me to grow. And that's always something that's very important to me. So a couple of tips that can help you navigate this type of manager or work with this type of manager is understand something. Let me back up a little bit. The first 3 tips that I'm going to give you has more to do with a mindset shift. Okay, a mindset shift. The first is understand that the business world is not a neat and tidy place. You're not going to always get a whole lot of details and a whole lot of instructions or resources or just reference material. That's just not going to happen. It is not neat and tidy like that. So just shift your mind and make sure that you're reminded of that. The second is, remember that your manager is human. Many times they don't necessarily know all the details. They just know what the end goal should be, but they don't necessarily know all the details to tell you. Sometimes they're not even 100% sure of what they actually want. If they see it, they'll say, hey, I like that, or I don't like that, but they're human and they just don't know all the details. So don't expect them to always come up with that stuff. The third thing is, see the vagueness as a compliment and a gift. Let me tell you why. They trust you with ambiguity. They are trusting you to fill in the blanks, which shows that they actually have a level of trust. The second thing is, you can possibly see it as a gift because it means that you're not tied down to a particular template or whatever. It means that you can possibly get creative and do something different. So don't be afraid to take a leap and to do whatever concepts, to fill out whatever concepts come into your heart, so to speak. With this manager, you also want to do a small version of what you think they're asking for. Show it to them so that they can share with you. Yeah, I like that. I don't like that. I don't like that direction. Don't do the whole thing and then come back to this person and then they're going to tell you that, I'm sorry, that's not what I was thinking. Make sure that you show them what you worked on so far, get some feedback from them, and then make whatever adjustments and keep going from there. And this is one of my favorite pieces of advice. It's helped me so much and I want to share it with you. Do a project intake interview. Now, I don't even know if this is like a formal term out there, but I'm calling it a project intake interview. An intake interview is typically something that's done by psychologists or coaches, where they're sitting with their clients in that first interview and they are pretty much finding out, what's brought you here? What are the goals that you have for a session? What does success look like? And so you want to create that same thing for assignments that you get from this type of manager, and maybe any manager really. What you want to start off doing is figure out what is important for you to know in order to do a good job on this project. What do you typically need to know? Then you want to use that to create a kind of questionnaire. And then you want to sit your manager down. I would prefer that you do it face-to-face and just do a little mini interview. Some of the questions you can ask are, what's the latest completion date for this? Because you have other things that you're juggling. So maybe just find out what's the latest date that you can get it done. The other is, what's the ultimate purpose of the project? What do you want to accomplish with this project? And definitely ask them what does success look like. If it's a training thing, what should people sound like and behave like? If it is something that has to do with graphic design, what should people feel and think when they look at this particular thing? And in you asking those questions, sometimes you can help generate more ideas in your actual manager. So that is something that I know has helped me, and I think it'll help you. The other type of manager is the non-responsive manager. I have to tell you, this was a challenge for me. One particular scenario that I had with this particular manager was that there were certain supplies and resources that I needed in order to do my job, in order to serve our customers. And I would go to this manager to ask him for this stuff, and he would listen, and it would seem like everything was good to go, but he never delivered the things that I needed. He never got the things that I needed. And I would go through the steps of following up with him, and the result was still the same. I just never got the stuff that I needed. I worked with a partner, and what I observed was that when my partner would go and ask him, that he would get what he needed. Sometimes, so this is the tip, sometimes you have to really observe your workplace and observe your manager. And if you're finding that a particular route works, then use it. If it's an approved route and it gets the job done, sometimes you just have to find alternative ways to do what you need to do. And so that's what I needed to do in this particular scenario to navigate and to work well with this particular manager. You want to be careful to just always use good judgment when it comes down to finding alternative methods. You want to make sure that you still maintain that relationship with the manager, but ensure that you just find whatever creative alternative, make sure that it's approved, make sure that it's appropriate, and find those alternatives to get the work done. The last is the new or inexperienced manager. How do you work well with the new or inexperienced manager? The fact of the matter is, I think most of us have either worked with someone who was new to being a manager, or perhaps just maybe they had less experience than we have. I mean, I've spoken with folks in organizations where they actually had to train their manager. And it's simply a reality of the workplace today that people come, they may be new, or they may not have as much experience as you have. Whatever the case may be, we're all going to find ourselves in that situation at one point or the other. Some tips that I would offer would be, number one, you want to make sure that you are respectful. Whoever this person is, they are ultimately the ones who are seen by management as being accountable for your role or for your team. So regardless if they have the same or less experience or whether they're new, you want to make it a point to be respectful, because that's what you would want, for someone to respect you. So you want to make sure that you always offer that same respect regardless. The second tip is to be patient. Many times folks that end up becoming a manager, whether they're promoted or they simply got hired as a manager, there are some organizations that they may not have the resources. And so these folks are not provided with management training or coaching or mentoring. And so they're trying to find their way. They're trying to figure stuff out. So I think it's important that you immediately get that mindset that I need to make sure that I am patient as this person tries to find their way. Hopefully, if the resources and the training and all that good stuff is not provided, hopefully this manager will go out there and get it. Read books, find people who will be mentors to them so that they can bring their skills up for the sake of their own selves and for the sake of their team. But in the meantime, as someone on their team, do your best to be patient. A third thing, I guess these next two are kind of related. It is being helpful. So one of the ways I think you can be helpful is by sitting down with that manager and maybe finding out what are their expectations. Not sure, what are their expectations? What's the target? So that you can be clear on what it is that they expect of you, and that you're both on the same page in terms of what do you need to do in order to do a great job, in order to support the team. The other thing is you could also take the initiative and set up meetings, whether it's at whatever frequency that works for you. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's bi-weekly, to keep this person aware of the projects that you're working on, because it can be pretty embarrassing if somebody asks this person, what's going on with this project, and it's maybe a project you're working on and they have no clue. So do your best to take initiative when you can, but you want to be careful here with taking initiative, because if this person is new, that can sometimes rub the person the wrong way. You just want to make sure that you're not overstepping in you taking initiatives. I guess what I want to leave you with is being a manager is a tough job. You may be a manager, or the fact is you may become a manager one day. It's not an easy job. I've read certain things that have said that a lot of managers these days have so much stuff on their plate. And on top of it, some organizations are opting to have less managers. So you have more people actually reporting to one person. There's just not enough time in the day sometimes to get done what they need to get done. And so overall, I would say just ensure that you take the time to study and to understand the manager that you're working with. Understand perhaps what's expected of them, what is expected of your team as a whole, and to do your best to adapt and to adjust to support your team and to support your manager. Here's a quote by Wendy Hearn that I think wraps up our time. It says, "If they lacked flexibility, they wouldn't be able to adapt to different situations and come out winning. When you're flexible, you're willing to consider the best approach for each particular situation." And that applies to just considering the best approach to each of the different types of managers that you have. Adapt, be flexible, and that will absolutely help you to have a more seamless work experience. I hope you found that video helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please pause right now and take the time to like it. Take the time to share this video. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Until next time, have a wonderful work week.